The applause grew louder as my father stepped onto the stage. A spotlight followed him across the ballroom, while nearly 300 guests rose to their feet. Executives, politicians, longtime clients, and old friends smiled as they celebrated the end of his 40-year career. The host raised his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Richard Carter." My father accepted the applause with the confidence of a man who believed he had conquered everything life had placed in front of him. He thanked the board, shared funny stories about impossible deadlines, and spoke proudly about building the company from almost nothing. For a moment, I forgot how complicated our relationship had always been. Maybe tonight would finally be different. Maybe retirement had softened him. Emma gently squeezed my hand beneath the table. She seemed to be hoping for the same miracle. Then my father looked toward our table. My family made many sacrifices for my success. My heart began beating faster. This was it. Finally, he smiled at my older brother. My eldest son understood what success truly demands: discipline, sacrifice, ambition. Daniel stood as the audience applauded. Dad lifted his glass toward him. "I'm proud of the man you've become." The ballroom erupted once again. Then, my father slowly turned toward me. The warmth disappeared from his face. But not everyone learns those lessons. The applause faded into complete silence. My younger son had every opportunity I never had. He paused. And he chose to become the high school history teacher. A few awkward laughs spread across the ballroom. Dad continued without hesitation. "I spent 40 years building a company." He spends his days explaining history to teenagers. I felt every pair of eyes move toward me. Emma held my hand tighter. Then came the sentence that shattered everything I had spent my life trying to earn. "Every family has one child who carries the future." He pointed proudly toward Daniel. "And one who reminds you that talent means absolutely nothing without ambition." No one laughed. The silence hurt even more. I slowly pushed my chair back. Not because I wanted to defend myself, but because I couldn't stay there another second. Emma stood beside me. As we turned toward the exit, a calm voice stopped us. "Please don't leave." I turned around. The mysterious man in the dark suit stood only a few feet away. He looked directly into my eyes. "You deserve to see what happens next." His expression never changed. "But trust me, your father's night is just beginning." Cliffhanger. Before I could ask who he was, several senior executives suddenly stood up the moment they saw him. And my father's confident smile disappeared for the first time that evening. The mysterious man walked calmly toward the stage. I watched as several senior executives immediately straightened, their posture the moment they noticed him. One board member hurried across the room, whispering nervously into another executive's ear. My father noticed it too. For the first time that night, his confident smile faded. He leaned toward one of the directors and quietly asked something. The director answered with a tense expression, and I could see the color slowly draining from Dad's face. Who was this man? He wasn't wearing a company badge. He hadn't spoken to anyone, yet everyone important seemed to recognize him. The formal speeches finally ended, and guests scattered across the ballroom with drinks in their hands. I was ready to leave. Then Daniel walked over holding a glass of champagne. "You really know how to ruin a celebration," he said with a smirk. I stared at him. I didn't say a single word. "You didn't have to," he replied. "Dad worked 40 years for this company. Tonight was supposed to be about him." I let out a bitter laugh. Then maybe he shouldn't have humiliated me in front of everyone. Daniel shrugged. "You've always been too emotional." Before I could answer, Emma stepped between us. "That's enough." Daniel looked at her coldly. "You've spent years convincing him that being average is something to be proud of." Emma refused to back down. "He became a teacher because he wanted to change lives. There's nothing average about that." Daniel rolled his eyes and walked away without another word. A few seconds later, my mother approached us. Her eyes were filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I looked at her in confusion. "For what?" "For never stopping this." She reached into her purse and handed me a small sealed envelope. "It's from your grandfather." I frowned. "He passed away years ago." "I know," she replied softly. "He told me to give it to you only if your father ever crossed a line he could never take back." Before I could open it, a powerful voice echoed through the ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen." Everyone turned toward the stage. The mysterious man had picked up the microphone. Without introducing himself, without asking permission, he simply stood there with complete confidence. Then the chairman of the board rushed forward. His voice shook as he spoke. "Everyone, please welcome our Chief Executive Officer." The ballroom fell silent. The CEO slowly lifted a thick brown envelope into the air. "I received this package 3 days ago," he said. "It contains evidence that may change everything you believe about tonight's guest of honor." Cliffhanger. The CEO turned toward my father and asked one chilling question. "Mr. Carter, would you like to explain why your name appears on every document inside this file?" The ballroom fell into complete silence. No one reached for another drink. No one dared to whisper. Every eye was fixed on my father as the CEO stood at the podium, holding the thick brown envelope. My father cleared his throat and forced a smile. There must be some misunderstanding. The CEO remained calm. I hoped there was. He slowly placed the envelope on the podium. "That's why I spent the last 72 hours verifying every document with our internal audit team." A wave of nervous murmurs spread through the room. My father looked toward the senior executives, silently waiting for someone to defend him. No one did. The CEO opened the file. For the past 8 years, multiple vendor contracts were secretly redirected to companies, connected through hidden partnerships. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. Those companies collected millions of dollars in consulting fees. Several guests gasped. My father immediately shook his head. "I followed every company policy." The CEO nodded. "So we believed." He pulled out another document. "Until we discovered approval forms with signatures that don't match the official company records." The room became even quieter. Then something caught my attention. For just a second, my father looked at Daniel. It was only a glance, but it wasn't fear, it was worry. Before I could think about it any longer, my phone vibrated. A message from my mother appeared on the screen. "Open Grandpa's envelope." My hands began to shake. Emma noticed immediately. "Whatever is inside, we'll face it together." Taking a deep breath, I carefully opened the old envelope. Inside were only 3 things: a handwritten letter, a faded photograph, and a small USB drive taped neatly to the back. I unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was unmistakable. My grandfather's. "If you're reading this," Richard finally chose pride over family. A chill ran through my body. I turned over the old photograph. It showed my grandfather, my father, and me standing inside the company's very first warehouse many years ago. Written across the back were 6 haunting words. "Truth always survives, even after retirement." Then I noticed one final item hidden beneath the photograph, a receipt for a bank safety deposit box, dated 9 years earlier. My heart started racing. I had the strange feeling that whatever waited inside that box could destroy everything my father had spent 40 years protecting. Cliffhanger. Just as I slipped the receipt into my pocket, the CEO pulled out another document and said, "Mr. Carter, can you explain why someone ordered these fraud reports to be destroyed?" The CEO held up another document. His voice remained steady. "Mr. Carter, can you explain why multiple fraud reports were marked for deletion before they ever reached the board?" My father's face turned pale. "I've never seen those reports." The CEO pressed a button on a small remote. Behind him, the ballroom's giant screen lit up. An internal company email appeared for everyone to see. The sender's name had been hidden, but the reply was impossible to ignore. "Richard Carter, delete this report. I'll handle it personally." Gasps echoed throughout the room. Several board members looked at each other in disbelief. One executive quietly removed his company badge and walked toward the exit. The room was beginning to turn against my father. Suddenly, Daniel stood up. "This is ridiculous!" Every head turned toward him. My father devoted 40 years of his life to this company. He pointed angrily at the CEO. "You're destroying his retirement because of anonymous accusations." The CEO didn't raise his voice. "No." He looked directly at Daniel. "I'm delaying his retirement because of verified evidence." The entire ballroom froze. Then a woman slowly stood from the back row. She carried a worn leather folder against her chest. "My name is Sarah Mitchell." A few older executives immediately recognized her. She stepped onto the stage without hesitation. "I worked in internal compliance 6 years ago." My father's eyes widened with shock. "You?" Sarah nodded. "Yes, I was the employee who kept reporting procurement fraud." She looked around the ballroom. Every investigation disappeared before it could reach the board. Then she turned toward my father. "I always wondered who was protecting you." Her eyes shifted to Daniel. "But tonight, I finally have my answer." Daniel's confident expression disappeared. Emma leaned toward me. "Do you think he knew?" I couldn't answer. Too many memories suddenly came rushing back. The luxury cars, the expensive vacations, the houses Daniel somehow afforded long before his career should have made them possible. I had always believed he was simply successful. Now, nothing made sense anymore. The CEO slowly placed another file on the podium. We originally believed this fraud involved only one executive. He paused. Our latest investigation suggests someone outside the company helped manage the shell corporations. His eyes settled on Daniel. Only for a second, but everyone noticed. Daniel stepped backward. That's impossible. The CEO opened the final file. It would be if your signature wasn't on every single agreement. Daniel's face turned completely white. Cliffhanger. Before anyone could react, 2 investigators entered the ballroom carrying a sealed evidence box. And the CEO quietly said, "What they found this morning changes everything. And subscribe to the channel for next part."